Welcome back to the Origins by Esports Wars podcast. And now today's guest, I'm joined by, if you watch League of Legends, you will have seen him around multi-region, multi-game as well. It's none other than Daniel dGon Gonzalez. Give a round of applause. dGon, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for bringing me on and excited to be here.
No, it's a pleasure. Obviously, we've done plenty of work with you in the past, but it's nice to actually sit down and have a conversation with you where we can sort of talk all things, not only yourself, but also League, anything else you've worked on. It's just nice to have a catch up, to be honest. It's been a little while.
I know it feels like a while, and also it feels like we've known each other for a while. And also this is the first time where I'm not leading the conversation, Alex, but I'm sure it'll be great. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of different facets that we can dive into. Excited to see what you got.
Yeah, I mean, I much wish it was you leading the conversation. You're an absolute pro. I'm just here when Barney's busy, it seems, but I digress. But I wanted to dive a little bit into to your story in esports. I'm genuinely interested in this because it was kind of like, it appeared you burst on the scene, but you absolutely did not. You actually have like a bit of a storied career, up and down, all around sort of esports. But going back to the early stages, we're looking at Golden Guardians team manager with Golden State Warriors and such. Also, then tenure in LCS. Now you're over in Korea. So if you could take us back sort of early days, dGon, what even got you interested in this industry in the first place?
Yeah, I just did a mentor speaking series here in Korea for collegiate students, and it did kind of make me realize it's been a little while. It's been quite some ways. I graduated in college with a music degree. I studied opera in college. I found out quickly I didn't want to do opera, but I just wanted to graduate and get my degree and move on. I was lucky enough to find a position in engineering. I did some computer engineering, cybersecurity type stuff, got some certificates to prove that I was capable and able to use these gaming and problem solving skills that I've picked up to work there. Did that for a while, but in the time at work, I was consuming a lot of esports content. In college, my roommate's brother was on the Team Liquid team that won money in the Dota 2 International, the first time ever. And so that kind of started my, I guess, interest in esports and utilizing this skill set of being competitive and playing sports my whole life, this performance background I came from, and video games. And boom, like most people, you put it all together and you find out that you like it. And then it was, man, I really hate this job. How do I monetize the things that I love? And so you just look at other people that did it. It was a lot of the LCS broadcast at that time. My first gig was doing a game called Drop Zone. It was a 3v3. It was a 1v1 RTS MOBA where you control 3 units all at the same time. So it was kind of like an RTS, but only 3 units. And I did that at PAX West. That exhibit won Game of the Show. And it was because I was doing shoutcasting there. I'd like to think part of it was that I was doing shoutcasting there. We had a lot of League of Legends pros come up. We had some very big influencers come up. And from there, I was able to say, hey, I've done this live event. Now, how could I do your event? And could you pay for my flight? Could you pay for my pass and stuff? And eventually did enough of those that I put a reel together, send it over to Riot as a play-by-play commentator. They said, we actually would need a host. Are you interested in that? I was like, yeah, sure, anything. And I did my first split and only split at the LCS in 2017 this summer. They were still doing best of threes at that time. And I think about a month into me moving across the country, leaving my pretty secure, computer technology job, they were like, hey, we're sorry, we're moving from best of threes, 3 show days to best of ones, 2 show days. And, we got Dash, and at the time Riv was still there, Freak was still there. They can also flex as a host. So we kind of don't really need you as another host. And I thought that was it. All right, cool. Esports was fun. Hopefully my job back in tech is still there. But then there was an opening over at the Golden Guardians, the Golden State Warriors. And they were buying a franchise called the Golden Guardians. It was being ran by a couple former Rioters. Also, I knew the head coach through my time at Riot. It was Loco Doco. And they asked, would you want to be on the team side here? And I said, sure. And, I was pretty heartbroken about losing my casting job, but also I was like, this is esports. It should be fine, right? And I learned very quickly and through that year, there's nothing like winning, but we're, I think, one of the losingest franchises in the history of the LCS. And I didn't have the skill set to do it then. And I would much rather be in front of the camera, and not all jobs in esports are the same. So a lot of people at the time were like, yeah, but you're in LA, you're doing esports. Like, I'd do anything. I realized then, I was like, nah, I have a pretty good secondary job to casting. And I just don't, I don't want to do it. I want to be the storyteller. I want to be making these relationships and getting to show the best sides, the human sides of these stories behind the competition. So that's like the first chunk of it there, Alex.
Yeah, that's the first chapter of this long book, this long story career in esports. I like it when you talk. You can tell you're a natural, like the absolute buttery smooth voice. I was so drawn in. I was like, what's he going to say next? But no, like, it's weird hearing names like Loco Doco as well. What a throwback that was. That was a career. All right.
Yeah.
But obviously you went from, tenure in LCS, then sort of just gripping on where you could. But what kind of came next for you?
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I think when you have such a big stage and opportunity like that, like the LCS and being at Riot, and then the Golden State Warriors. I mean, when you have those back to back on my resume, it looks pretty nice. Not that, people in gaming look for resumes in the talent world too much. They usually look at your reel or your portfolio. But I thought I was done. I was like, okay, I did it, tried my best. And I had a friend and mentor of mine. He came out to LA because he needed help shooting a VR piece and needed some mocap actors, and was like, hey, you're in LA, you kind of did the arts, can you help me figure people out there? And I pulled from my voiceover experience, some friends I had made here in LA as well through performance and through meeting through conventions, and we found a studio. We shot this motion capture thing for the NAACP, which was supposed to be released for their 100-year anniversary, and it ended up being too realistic for audiences. And it was just talking about the immigration story and how difficult that story could be at the time. And it just wasn't what they wanted, but we still got paid. And he was like, hey man, like, thanks for doing this. Look, you're a doer, and you came out here as someone who was vetted by Riot, and you weren't let go because you weren't good enough. You're let go because of circumstance. So for you to get that good at anything else would take so much more time than if you would utilize the same skill set of getting things done, just finding a bigger pond to do it in. And that advice really resonated. I was like, sure, what's one more go? I have money in the bank still. I have support from friends. Let me just tweet out. Like, it feels embarrassing because, I got let go from LCS. The Golden Guardians thing didn't quite work out, but let me tweet out. And a friend of mine that I had ran into, Munchables, he was a caster and a producer, and is over, I think, doing NLC and LPL. He said, hey man, we're looking for someone for Arena of Valor, which is also Honor of Kings. Our world championship is in LA, and our host, unfortunately, can't get a visa. It's similar to a MOBA. Could you do it? And I was like, absolutely. And so I was studying a new game, making sure I had all the terminology correct. I was just the host, so thankfully I wasn't calling the plays. And from that one opportunity, the production company that did the show was impressed, and they had a studio in Las Vegas, and that got me some PUBG shows. And also the physical location of where we had done that world championship was owned by OGN, which is the Korean esports TV channel. They were branching out to America, and that impressed them as well. And so from those two different gigs, then I started getting a little bit more steady work. Hey, I've got this PUBG mobile thing that I think you'd be good for. Hey, I have this PUBG show that I think you'd be good for. It films partially in Las Vegas. Hey, I've got this collegiate League of Legends program that obviously you'd be great for. And from there, work started coming in 2019, and it was scary to be a freelancer. It is such a huge leap of faith. It is very easy to get sidetracked on off days when you don't have anything to do. But that year just kind of taught me it is such a marathon and not a sprint, and it is okay to not have work all the time. But it's also not okay to do nothing for long periods of time. You have to find like a middle ground there. And so that was the 2019 year, and then into 2020, COVID kind of took over the world. And so I was like, oh no, there goes all of my stability. There's no more live events. What do we do? The remote broadcast world was not up to speed, so people were not sure what to do. A friend of mine had a great quote. He said, man, it is a great time to be a streamer. It is not a great time to start being a streamer, because everyone was doing it. So I didn't want to be a streamer either. And this very big $30-something million invested TV network popped up. A startup TV network, had Viacom execs behind it. It had the son of GameStop behind it. It had the former head of broadcast of Riot Games behind it. And that was my in. He remembered me from our time together at Riot, and that TV network's name was Ven. I did several auditions. I was on multiple different shows. I was a network talent there. And because of the instability, I asked, hey, I'll take less money if you give me a salary. And that ended up being such a lifeline for me at the time, while we were shooting TV network quality, video gaming culture, news, entertainment. I got to interview Chris Pine. I got to interview the cast of The Boys. I got to interview Josh Duhamel, Zelina Vega, the wrestler from WWE, Demetrius Johnson, Mighty Mouse, one of the greatest MMA fighters in the world. It was just such a fun, unique, safe time during COVID, where we were getting all the different tests every day. But it really showed that despite every episode being costing thousands of dollars, maybe like 50, 60, 70,000 if you take a look at the people that are on the bench, the other talent, the studio rental fees, all that stuff, it doesn't really bother me, because as long as I'm telling the story, I feel pretty grounded. And that was a really great confidence boost here in the middle part of my story with Ven.
Yeah. No, it's nice to hear, because obviously Ven, it's insanely unique, because esports, it's going to be around forever. Sorry to everyone who doesn't want it to be, but it is. But there will always be, casters, there'll always be hosts. But like you said, interviewing the boys, the cast of The Boys, interview Chris Pine, wrestlers, Mighty Mouse from the used to be UFC, then won, then retired. But it's a very cool opportunity, very different. It was like an attempt to blend the worlds together, because I remember when Booger won that Fortnite tournament in New York, everyone was talking Booger. You'd go into your local barbers, your hairdresser, whoever is you'd hear the word Booger, and you're like, you people that aren't from this world, how do you know that? But it sort of branched into it. And I feel like 2019 through 2021, esports did hit a very strange mainstream bubble, where it was still small, still a niche, but people who just didn't understand, they knew gaming, they didn't know what there's the whole world of Faker and who, but all of a sudden they knew a little bit about esports. So it was quite it was that nice period of time where it's a load of people who've been doing it for years, who are experts or played the games for years. And it's I feel cool now. I feel validated.
Yeah.
But there's that.
Yeah. I think that was the idea behind the TV network. It was trying to capitalize on that. But because of COVID and the idea itself, the idea itself wasn't great. And I think the big conclusion from that, or multiple conclusions from that saga, but the big conclusion from that is the audience in gaming want on demand and familiar, not live and, highest quality, I'd say. Like, they want familiar. They want what they know, and they'll slowly take things in with what they know, I'd say.
Yeah, I've always found that one with eras in esports. People really struggle with change. Like looking at T1 now, we're taking out Gumayusi, and like, yeah, he's a brilliant player, but the replacement ain't too bad. And then it gets to a point where the CEO has to step in and be like, nope, Guma's back, because the fans really just didn't take to it. And it's like, it just, esports fans, like, the change just isn't good. This is our bubble. Don't touch it. Don't move it. Don't change it. Honestly, the day that Faker retires and like Fallen's no longer a CS player, I fear for that day. Everyone is just going to be absolute little bombshell.
I mean, it was the same thing. It was the same thing with like, Scump moving on from COD, and you had this space now of who are the next huge stars that are filling those roles. I think about that all the time with League of Legends, with how much Faker means to T1, the LCK, League of Legends esports as a whole, and kind of South Korea. Like, he is a national figure out here. Like, again, like K-pop stars, Sunny like lists him as like, one of his like celebrity idols. Like, it is just massive that the impact that this player has, and the next biggest player it'll be insular. It'll be within the League of Legends esports community, maybe the esports community, but Faker himself has transcended that. And again, I think maybe it's the audience and maybe it's just the psyche of an esports fan, but at the end of the day, the fan dictates what they will spend their money on and what they put their eyes to. And sometimes they don't know what they want until they see it, which was kind of Faker, and I think people are made big swings to try and see, do you like this, fans? Here, we're going to try something different, try something expensive. Oh, no, you don't like it? Okay, that's fine.
It's fine. We can go back to the tried and tested. It'll always be there. But obviously, you spoke about Ven and so on, but then you actually joined over to ESA, Esports Awards, in 2023 for like sort of the first appearance, sort of the debut. And that was a good year. Like, you did multiple shows. You were there at the ceremony and so on. How was it that night in 2023? Obviously, that was a big show for us. It was Vegas. There was a world record, key to the city. How did you feel going through the whole process of finding this reveal show, and then all of a sudden you're at the ceremony, all of a sudden we're playing Pac-Man on the world's biggest screen that a video game's ever been played on?
Yeah, I mean, I joined in 2022, and I see that you skipped over that one very cheekily, but Mike, CEO Mike, did such a great job of taking that show, being like, hey, we dreamed big, we thought really big, we did some good things, and we have a lot of learning lessons. Please share that with me. And that level of openness and that level of, I guess, just desire for feedback and accountability is rare. It's pretty rare in a space, and I very much appreciated that. And so in the build up to 2023, it felt like, okay, we have a very capable team. We understand what we know, and very importantly, we understand what we don't know now in this venue, in this in Vegas, in the same hotel casino area. We know what we want to execute on and how to improve, and let's do it. And it was one of those shows where everything kind of came together really, really well. A very unique setup with the inside the venue and then outside the venue type setup. And then to be a part of that world record broadcast and be in the Guinness Book of World Records was pretty great. It just felt like such a great moment with my friends, my colleagues that I've been working with for such a long time. The desk was, everyone I trust so well on the desk and have worked with multiple times before or since then with Dash, Wavepunk, and Lottie Van Prague. It was just, again, one of those moments in my career where I got to just reaffirm like, oh, I belong here. And I also get to be in their presence, and they get to say all these nice things about me. And we created a show where it was magical. Like, it was just a magical show. And that's always a really cool part of Esports Awards.
Yeah, it's super unique. I did gloss over 2022, but that one was a fever dream. We forget that one. But 23, that was an absolute brilliant show. It was just a lot going on. It was like almost like a bit overstimulating at points where it's like the show's over, and all of a sudden Stax is just stood under a light, and let's just see you CO2 cannon just hitting him. It's like we're going out stage, and WWE wrestlers are walking by. It's like, what's going on? But it was great. It was exciting, and then obviously from there you stuck with us through 2024. You're helping out in Riyadh, you helped out in LA as well. But how was it for you with 2024? Obviously, transitioning from just like it was like one show, there was an absolute barrage of awards in one night in 23 to obviously splitting it into two events, a lot less going on.
It felt a little more like not nearly as fever dreamy. Maybe the temperature wasn't as high in the fever dream in 2024 in terms of just learning lessons. Again, just learning lessons on what do you know, what do you not know, how can we improve it for next time, how do our initial plans in a new venue, a new setup kind of pick up. I think doing the red carpet was just another one of these unique challenges you get to have because you want to tell the story. You have 2 minutes. I'm with my trusty partner, Hercules, who I've now worked with for 3 years. And, I've seen her grow up here throughout the bright lights of esports and just handle live. Well, a lot of people don't handle live content or I guess like a setup or stage where things can be fluid. They like knowing where things are, knowing what I'm throwing to, and that's it. And they can't, grasp outside of it. And there are times where I get into moods like that and modes like that. And to go in Riyadh in 2024 and get thrown in there, both on the Gillette Reset Studio, as well as the red carpet show. It just was like, again, just a great flex of this craftsmanship that I've been working on for years now, and another opportunity for us to tell stories in a way that I feel like I uniquely can.
Yeah, you're a little bit of a Swiss Army knife with sort of storytelling at the forefront. We've got a multifaceted tool set to get there. And obviously, you're a big football or soccer fan. And am I right thinking you got to meet Patrice Evra out in Riyadh as well?
Rarely do you get starstruck. It was pretty crazy. I mean, he was, and I think I try to emulate this, but he was the same person as you see in the content. Big personality, very loving, a little witty, down to play, educated, but curious. And then the suit he had and his sunglasses, he had the rose tinted sunglasses that he honestly wore all last year in all pieces of content. It was just a surreal moment to be with the right back of my favorite team, which was Manchester United. And that was a pretty surreal moment up there. I guess when I met Christian McCaffrey, and then I went to him and said, "Hey, your dad was my favorite player on the Denver Broncos." And he goes, "Yeah, he's my favorite player too." And I was like, okay, I'm not saying any more stupid fan stuff ever again.
Never glazing ever again. Never giving props. Nope.
Not at that level.
Nah, definitely not. But then like touching on later in 24, obviously going out to LA and doing that, there's a moment for me that I as I said at the time, and I say it now, like, when we did the PUBG Mobile tournament, the end of the Esports was a Samsung Galaxy Battle. What Jin you? Because obviously, I know you have done a little bit of PUBG in the past before that, but like, I feel like you studied. You were like a scholar because obviously there isn't the wheelhouse of that desk. Like, we didn't have anyone from the PUBG Mobile scene casting it, but the screen was tiny, and you had to get as close as possible to try and actually see what was going on. But you were just throwing out actual terminology and following it properly. It was actually quite cool to see because before that, obviously, you're the League of Legends guy, but it's like you're there following an FPS. And it was it wasn't exactly a professional level throughout. Some players were clearly good, but, you were following along with the gameplay, explaining sort of positions and maps. But how did you get to a point where, like, you can transition your knowledge of a MOBA to an FPS and just cast, like, very smoothly?
So, get the clip ready. Here it is. Proficiency as a talent and as a caster comes from not losing credibility while storytelling. And with PUBG Mobile, thankfully, it was one of the games that I did do as a freelance commentator, and I've had to both flex as a play-by-play and as a host and as an analyst before, but I'm not great at that one. But in PUBG Mobile, there was a lack of analysts in the space. And so I took that on for a little bit and worked with some of the North American players and asked them like, hey, is this right? Is this right thinking? Blah, blah, blah. And I would send him the clip of the official broadcast of me saying, hey, the comms must be this way. And he said, yep, that's exactly what we said. That's pretty awesome that you picked up on that. And so that was back in 2019. And to be able to pull that back out in 2024 during the Samsung Galaxy battles was pretty great. And it felt like I wanted to do justice to that community. And I checked in with the fellow casting homies, and it seemed like I was going to take the lead on that. And so I did with credibility, but everyone again, it was super talented and had esports storytelling knowledge. And so when it was time to splice in, I guess, the expertise, that's when I tried to go ahead and differentiate that broadcast. But it was again a cool moment to share the stage with my boy Rain Day, who also was at Venn back in 2020 and 2021. So the amount of, I guess, reconnecting with peers and friends and getting to create, is just such a moment of joy that I get to have. And Esports Awards does such a great job of bringing together so many different producers and talent and players that I've gotten to talk to over the years, team owners over the years, and be able to just celebrate with them the success of esport.
Yeah, and honestly, I've been on this project quite a while, the Esports Awards, sort of 2017 as a freelancer, then full-time 2019 onwards, but it's almost like it's like my only real in with esports. But one of the beautiful things of the Esports Awards is I feel like I haven't lost out, because we bring talent from pretty much every single game together. Like, you're on a desk with Call of Duty and Rainbow Six, as well as Apex, and then yourself. And it's like, that is just such a multifaceted desk. But how do you find it being able to like come to an Esports Award, start, being a host casting as the PUBG tournament, but getting to connect with people from every title, every game?
Well, I got to watch one of the best ever do it with Dash. And he is, in my opinion, the best host in esports. And the way that he focused the craft, a lot of the things he did in pre-prep, in terms of the meetings and the direction of how the show needed to go, he was willing to be that person to get it there. But one thing that he wasn't, and that's what I needed to learn when I was at the LCS, how do I differentiate myself? He didn't, work was work. When it was done for him. And for me, I wanted to continue to learn and be a part of different communities, especially if I was doing freelance. So it goes back to the freelance world and not losing credibility. If you're given the opportunity to be one of the mouthpieces of the story, you don't want to be a defective mouthpiece. Like, if it's like a reed for a saxophone or something, you don't want it to be frayed or anything like that. You want it to feel smooth. You want it to feel familiar. And I think the focus on just figuring out what's important to the audience, figuring out what's important to the players and coaching staff, and then uniquely adding in the way that I want to tell that is what I do. And then at Esports Awards, it's an opportunity to, I guess, pull out different tool sets, since it's different games, different titles, different lingos, and then get to sit back and watch the experts really like dive in. You throw out something that sounds like the Village Idiot is kind of saying, and they go, well, that's not exactly correct. KDA is actually a false stat in our esport. And then they go off, and you just get to be a front row passenger at learning about what is important and what is not to the stories of that title.
Yeah, it's almost like you can't compare the KDA of a Call of Duty player to Counter-Strike, because some Call of Duty maps is you respawn and it's like, you what now? You come back to life after dying. But obviously, you spoke a lot about sharing knowledge in that, but I feel like you've kind of found your wheelhouse recently with the LCK. You're out in Korea with it, and kind of like your new home. you've been doing that for quite a while now. How's it been over there? Sort of the transition from obviously America to Korea, but also it's a completely new audience. Although it's the same game, it's a completely different way of fandom.
Yeah, I think I'd spent so much of my time in League of Legends. You know, all the broadcasts are Riot controlled mainly, and when those seats are filled, they're great seats, but when those seats are filled, there really isn't opportunity for you. So I had made a couple of shows and podcasts that covered global League of Legends, and then obviously a lot of the freelance work that we've had. It gave me a good idea on how to be able to switch into different audiences and different environments. And so moving to Korea wasn't as big of a work shock. It definitely wasn't at all, because I've had such great talent around me. Every caster on the LCK is a genuinely amazing human being, and also happens to be some of the best, if not the best in the world. A couple guys that have had the opportunity to cast a world finals in League of Legends. Almost everyone has been on an international broadcast. Actually, I'm pretty sure everyone's been on an international broadcast. Wadid, our Korean pro player, spent most of his career on G2. So he won one of those international tournaments. And so I'm surrounded by an amazing cast. And so it just makes the work very, very easy. And then with the audience, it was not as far changed as I thought, because I think a lot of people from the West, LCS viewers or now LTA, and then LEC viewers, they would watch that. And then an Asian region, generally LCK, with the broadcast being a little bit more familiar with the global reach of T1 and success of Gen G, it kind of felt like, oh, the audience is, it's the same audience. It's just a little bit extra, and then you have a good chunk of core LCK only fans, since we're still the English broadcast. And so the Korean LCK broadcast, that's different. That's very different. But the English LCK broadcast, not as different, but still specific to LCK. And so we're able to throw out memes that matter both to LCK, but also Western fans, and use other examples from different leagues and whatnot. So that change hasn't been as massive as I thought it would be. Living in Korea, in another country, it's great. Signs are written in English and Korean. I am surrounded by great resources to learn Korean and Hangul, and have been taking lessons. And they have great technology here for translation apps, for navigation, that are Korea only. So there isn't like bad information, I would say. It's all it works correctly. I just need to know how to spell it. And then everything is kind of linked to your phone number. So there isn't a lot of spam, because you only get one phone number and it's all connected to that. So yeah, living in Korea has been pretty great. I miss sunshine, 72, 73 every day in LA. What is that? 23 Celsius in, I guess the metric system. Yeah. But other than that, it's been great. I found soccer, I found a lot of golf, and obviously the best League of Legends in the world, and getting to work with some of the best talent. Great producer, Ji-sun, who many people know as one of the translators during international events here in the LCK. She runs the English broadcast and does it with such great leadership and understanding and empathy for all of us. And it's a very much a great place to work.
Yeah, now obviously a good reason why the LCK is brought to an English audience is so important is because it is the best region. Like, as we've just seen in the first stand, Hanwha literally walked it. It wasn't really competitive throughout, dropping a game or two throughout, but it's also historically been like the region. Obviously the LPL had its time where, it took a couple of worlds, but everyone always knew that the LCK was rebuilding and regrowing. But do you find like sort of that's a reason why it's so similar to a regular Western Riot Games broadcast, is because a lot of people are tuning in just because it is the pinnacle of League of Legends week in, week out?
Yeah, I think it's that. And I think we've got the biggest attraction in gaming with Faker and T1, that global behemoth of a brand here in LCK. And I think the culture around it as well, even the lowest teams, your BNK Furex, the OK Man Brion, the Nongshim Red Force, they sell out their tickets at LOL Park every week. Every week. A lot of shows and broadcasts. I was thinking about this when I was watching the USA versus, I think, Canada for CONCACAF, like Nations League, going to football here, soccer. They only sell one ticket for the day. One ticket for the day, you get 2 matches. In LCK, they can't do that because the fans come into the stadium per team. And so you're there for session 1, which is Hanwha versus DRX, and then session 2, T1 versus KT. You got to sell 2 sets of tickets, and that's how crazy the fandom is here. So I think it's also driven within the culture of esports in Korea, and luckily enough, it has been continuing to be booming.
Yeah, it's good to hear that, because obviously over in the West, sadly, League of Legends is having a bit of a stardom problem. You've still got the G2 roster, the caps and so on, that they're still a star. But when you go over to North America and now South America, the LTA League, and mixed together, North America's not had a big star player for quite a while, to the point of where, when you're talking big star, I'm talking, the double lifts, Bjergsen's, Wild Turtle's just retired. It's not actually had like the figurehead where you'd put them on the poster, whereas, it's always been Faker for the LCKs, Caps is sort of the LECs. But it's crazy to hear that over in Korea, they're having to sell multiple tickets per day in sessions, because I just feel like it wouldn't be viable in any other region. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think this is a very complex situation. With the LEC, they did a great job and have a much larger player pool to pull from with EMEA Masters and the tier 2 system that was built up there. The fact that it's national leagues, so there's built-in geographical fandom that's in there, whereas in North America at the time, everything is located in Los Angeles. Teams, it could be from all over. So it did make it a little bit harder, and I see they were trying with the LTA North and LTA South. They are creating a geographical support with the North American League teams and then the South American League teams kind of pulling for each other. And then eventually at internationals, you'll support whichever one wins, which seems like it's LTA so far. But there is hope. NACL, the tier 2 system that has been popped up, is back up again and running with a promotion relegation system to light some competitive fire into the tier 2 teams, and some competitive fire to the bottom tier 1 teams in LTA North and South. So you can't just coast by anymore, which is kind of what happened with LCS. If you were good enough, you'd probably have a job, and if you're willing to continue to drop your salaries a little bit, you were fine. But now there's a competitiveness and a drive and a way in for these great players to not just move on to another game or be like, what's the point? Let's keep going and let's find a way to represent North America and make this dream a reality. And that was one of the core things back from the good old days, the 2011 to maybe 2015 era of League of Legends in North America. You had these friendship teams like CLG, like Cloud9 promote on up. You had even LMQ, which was a Chinese team that moved to North America, and they were the North American 3 seed. Like they found a way to make it possible until that rule got patched. But you wanted to watch to be like, is this team really going to do it? Is Team Liquid really not going to make it on out? Are they really going to finish 4th again for the 4th year in a row? 4-4-4? I don't know. And you would watch. Whereas now you kind of got a little stagnated, and hopefully some of that competitive nature will allow these great players that we do have in North America some competition, some smack talk behind just APA, behind just Masu, behind just General Sniper over 400 Thieves. So there's 4 teams for you, just 3 teams for you off the top of my head. And and see if they can find success. Because at the end of the day, if you win, people will tune in, which is why people watch the LCK. They tune in. If you lose too much, people will stop watching, which is kind of what happened to the LPL. You make it to the pinnacle and then weren't able to topple whoever was on top that year. And for the last several years, it's been T1. Before that, it was DRX. And then you go to IG, which had Korean players on it, like Viper, who's now in Hanwha Life Esports. So you got to win some, and the eyes will come back. The pride comes back. The fire comes back. And North America is still looking for that signature win, that signature moment. And they almost got it in the 2024 Worlds against Gen G in the quarterfinals through FlyQuest, which pushed them to Game 5. And I think if you look at Europe, that's why people still love supporting G2. They have been able to do it. They have proven winners. And now they're changing their roster a little bit. And I think that's also why it's exciting to be a Karmine Corp fan. They found ways to make it to the finals of an international event. The first finals that EU has made it since 2019. Winning helps solve some of the viewership issue, but the infrastructure needs to be there. Europe is already tuned a little bit better than North America, and then the winning came, and that's why they've had a little bit more success over the last several years. But North America has talent. They just got to be able to put it together, and I'm sure the viewership will come back on that front.
Yeah, and I love what you mentioned there about, Karmine Corp. They brought, they came second, because at the start of that tournament, Karmine Corp lost to Team Liquid, and it was like what, looking at the general comments of how did they make it? Should have been G2. They got lucky because G2 initially knocked them to the losers, then in the final ended up losing to Karmine, and then that's why they're in first stand. But it's interesting because the second they lost, it was like, at least he's done. It's washed. It's over. NA's brilliant again. And then it's like, oh, never mind. They've made it to the final. Oh, we're back to regular scheduling then. We all love European League of Legends again. Yep, great.
Honestly, for viewership, and long term, in terms of like long term outlook, that was probably the best outcome possible. Because if it was Team Liquid beats Karmine Corp, this new team that has broken up the winning streak of G2 over the last, I think, 2 years, 6 splits or whatever it was, and they lose to Team Liquid and they're out, that would just be absolutely deflating. And yes, EU's done. Team Liquid not making it out was also not great, but they beat Europe. So there's like one of those major boxes ticked off for them. And, you get to see a new young team be able to make it on out in a format that has a lot of variance. It's not double elimination, best of 5 throughout. It was best of 1, I guess best of 3s, which can go either way, but it wasn't double round robin. So there's credence to that. But at the end of the day, when it was necessary, Karmine Corp won. When they needed to get lucky, they got lucky. And then they were able to win again. They took a game off of Hanwha Life there in the finals in game 1 to create that excitement. And I think there's a lot to build upon for Europe and the Western audience after this tournament.
Yeah, to me, it's all storylines. And like you said, literally that day 1 was brilliant, because let's say Team Liquid just got washed. They got swept, and it's like, great, tuning out. But it's like, Team Liquid could do it here. They could actually get somewhere competitive. And then Flying Oyster out of nowhere turn out to be smurfing as like, what's going on here? Why are you so good now? This didn't used to be the case. Yeah. So it generated a lot of excitement, because first stand, it's a new concept, new tournament. Not everyone knew about it, but everyone heard that Team Liquid just swept Karmine Corp out of the water. They just smashed them out, and that Flying Oyster are causing upsets, and that top have kind of crumbled. It's like, okay, like we've got excitement again. And then Hanwha ruined everything by just going, yeah, we are the best, by the way. Just wanted to remind you all, we're the best. You guys all suck.
They didn't ruin everything. They were just reminding everyone what class is, They also picked a lot of unique champions, which, was part of the fearless conversation. They didn't have to do that, but they did in terms of fun. But the CFO thing is pretty interesting. It was a 6-man roster. But more importantly, I love being able to tell these types of stories. Their coach Chowie was the coach of TSM in 2020 and 2021, the post Bjergsen years, and even before that, highly revered in Singapore as a coach in Southeast Asia, known as the general out there. And even though there are a couple people with that kind of nickname, General Sniper, if you say the General in North America, you think of another person on TSM, which was the odd one. But he was a historic leader of players, of teammates, and then eventually shifted to coach. And he's had a lot of huge successes. Didn't quite work out at TSM for him. Kind of got scapegoated for a TSM that didn't know what they wanted to do, and eventually they sold the slot over to Shopify Rebellion. And here he is now back on the big stage, creating huge upsets, running a 6-man roster, and has a quote from an interview, which I can't remember exactly the quote off the top of my head, but basically saying, I know what it's like to not be picked, and I'm trying to not ruin my players' careers. So I go out, tell them the truth, and tell them to do their best and trust in the team. And, having a 6-man roster, very, very unusual in League of Legends. Substitutes rarely get played, but with strategic diversity of first stand and a unique, it's not carelessness, but confidence by Chowie, CFO, were a great storyline from first stand.
Yeah, it was brilliant to see. But obviously, spoke about first stand, and that was a great start for League. It was actually nice to see a fresh international concept work, because Rift Rivals was the old international third tournament that didn't quite land how they expected. There was a few good moments, a few little EU versus NA bits. But what does the rest of 2025 look like for yourself? Because obviously, League of Legends 2025 looks like MSI regular splits returning, and obviously Worlds. But how about yourself? What are you looking forward to?
I think Fearless Draft and maybe seeing more teams experiment with the 6-man roster and have clear, unique, strategic advantages with that. It goes back to the conversation of like Super Smash Brothers Melee as a game and evolving over time as long as it does, compared to League of Legends, which has patches every 2 weeks. Can this be solved, or can this be solved in time for a tournament? And by having Fearless Draft here, it opens up a whole new avenue of how do we solve this? And yes, there is a current meta of what we play in game 1, what we play in game 2, what we play in game 3. Okay, now we get to the weird stuff. At any point, anyone can decide to break that and get an advantage. They can also try to buck the trend and look silly and end up getting 0-2'd, 0-3'd because they played around with the draft too much. But that is what I'm looking forward to, a fearless team and organization that have buy-in to innovate the meta in this brand new skill set we have in League of Legends. It'll be the game that you play at home. We're not just playing Corki and Azir in the mid lane every time. We're not just trading Varus and Ashe in the bot lane every time. You now have champion diversity and strategic diversity to see the best players in the world have to solve the game differently. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, because there used to be that beautiful term of champion pool or champion ocean. And then it kind of got to a point where those with the ocean started to get washed out a little bit because there was no punishment, because they got to a point where there was too many prio bans, prio picks. Where it's like, one of your 3 main picks is making it through. You'll get to play it and it'll fit. But to be honest, anything that limits the amount of Yumi that can be played, no matter what the meta is good for me. That little cat has ruined League of Legends for me. That ruins competitive watching as someone just literally coasting on by. But ultimately, I wanted to know as well, you've had quite an interesting career, and you've been super grounded and quite wise throughout telling the story. But if you could go back and sort of talk to younger dGon, back in the days of uncertainty, what advice would you have to sort of help get him through to where you are now?
Really? That's always good. I think I just talked about how I think it's okay. I need to figure out how to take what I want to say. This is actually my goal for 2025. It's take what I want to say and then be like, that's not how you should say it. You should say the opposite inverse, which is basically the same thing, but the other way. And so really relish your friends during the hard times and how much time they did give you and how much of the energy they did give you, because that I wouldn't be here without the support of community and building community, giving back to community, investing in community is so important to career success, but also I think just human life. Like, we are meant to share things. We're meant to empathize. We're meant to sympathize. And I think doing that on the broadcast comes pretty naturally to me. And then being intentful off the broadcast doing that is very important as well. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I like it because, like I said, you've been quite wise throughout of here. You've dropped a couple of good like quotes and sort of knowledge things, but we've not got much more time left. So I need to ask you the question we try and ask every guest, but it's essentially, if someone's trying to break through into the industry, no matter what facet they're in, what advice would you have for them to actually try and get into the industry, whether they want it to be a caster, player, a team manager, or, you know, in the business end, but the esports is what they want?
Be brilliant at your craft, be undeniable in your work ethic, and be as loving to be around. And it will open up.
I like that. A lot of people go with just work hard and hard work will get you there. But no, I like that. And honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been nice to catch up with you, nice to chat. I wish you the best for the rest of 2025. And thank you for coming down.